Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Kiriakou. I'm delighted to be joined by Ash Knight. This has been in the running, in the making for a little while now. And when I first spoke to Ash, he was pretty against doing podcasts. So I'm pretty proud that I've actually got him on the show today. Ash, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. As always, I'd love for you to just give everyone a bit of an intro, what you do, what your business is, and a little bit about who you are, mate.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Charles. Nice to be here. First podcast, popping the cherry. So I'm Ash Knight, owner of AJ Group. AJ Group is an international recruitment business. Our story, if you like, is we'll take a brownfield piece of land, build a facility, usually a high-tech facility such as a data center, biotech, manufacturing facility, pharma, automated warehouse, etc. Whatever then happens in that facility, we'll staff it. And then I guess the back end of that then is the logistics, supply chain, distribution piece. So we've been going for about 10 and a half years. Also a seed investor in various other recruitment businesses. Anyone who's been on my LinkedIn will see some of those names. Some have gone on to do amazing things, and others, yeah. And yeah, I guess quite a passionate investor as well outside of the recruitment world. So I'll go into that in more detail later. But dad of three, husband, two boys, one girl. Best job in the world being a dad. Obviously, husband's a little bit more tricky, but we're doing okay. And that's me. So
Love it. Love it, mate. Well, look, we've got some wicked topics to get into. And yeah, I think the first thing that I wanted to talk about with Ash on the show today is before we click record, we were talking about how for a founder to go away and hire an MD and take over some of those responsibilities is quite tough to pass over. Like you've been building this business for a while to then pass that over to somebody and bringing in an MD. But there's pros and cons of it, of course. And when it goes really well, it's a really, really good thing to do. You've obviously done that. And the phrase that you use is like the best and worst decision that you've made, right?
mhm.
Some people might go, wait, what does he mean by that? So I just pass it over to you, mate. So talk us through that journey.
Yeah, best and worst decision. I guess most recruitment business owners from experience can be control freaks. Most recruiters as well. I think it kind of comes with the territory, trying to control outcomes, pipeline, managing interviews, managing candidates, closing stuff. So I guess that was one of the first challenges, letting go. I think there's a couple of great examples of this in the modern world. Ben at Gymshark being
Mhm.
probably the most famous, where recognized maybe some weaknesses in his own closet and then also some real strengths. And I think made the opportunity to bring in a different CEO. And, you look at the Gymshark journey, it kind of quashes everything and anything in our industry by a long way. So I think for me, at the time, it probably was about a year ahead. So I'll go into the background of how it all happened. So Rich Westhead is our MD. He's been in situ since around October 2024. For those who know and those who don't, I used to run a recruitment rec to rec business. So that was
Mhm.
my kind of like, old stomping ground,
Mhm.
Manchester, Birmingham. And Rich was actually my first client after setting up AJC, as it was, actually, James. And yeah, I kind of found, I mean, we kept in touch. We made
Mhm.
some early door placements there, and it kind of came full circle. I think Rich was in a position where search wasn't ticking all the boxes, the kind of biological clock from I want to build some wealth and leave I guess a big dent in the recruitment industry
Mhm.
was happening at the time. This was probably around summer 2024. We were having the worst year on record. I'd invested in a couple of other bits outside of the AJ business, and I think the timing for me was probably, like I say, a year ahead of schedule. But I knew Rich, I liked Rich, I'd seen him operate, I'd had internal and external references on him from candidates that we'd
Mhm.
played. I'd seen people in his team go on to do amazing things, and we kind of aligned on quite a few things. So for me, it was a no-brainer at the time. I needed to free up some of my own time to focus on some of these other businesses that I was a co-founder and shareholder and kind of director of. And I think the irony is that the time that I freed up, in those other businesses ultimately rendered itself useless because I've since exited every single one of those businesses, off my own accord, and I think for the right reasons. So bringing Rich in, letting go was probably the hardest thing first. So there was an onboarding piece, there was a um, transition period of probably around 6 months where, I was holding on to the apron
Mm,
strings as tightly as I could, obviously empowering and trusting Rich and Siobhan in the ops manager role to kind of take on the day to day. First, it was kind of the month to month, week to week, and then into the day to day running. So, yeah, it was quite a challenge. I did prepare some notes, so I'm going to try and keep it as free flowing as possible. But um, I think Rich's strengths and my own strengths, kind of from what I've seen and the feedback we've had in the business, very much like dovetail.
mm,
So Rich is very granular into the detail, sees things through. I think ADHD superpower by his own admission. So, very good at the forecasting, the numbers, the spreadsheets. I'm also very good with forecasting numbers and spreadsheets, but for me, the high level strategy, where are we going? What are we
mm,
doing? What's our purpose? Why are we doing this? What's the big picture? And how does each of the kind of components of the business, fit together, and how do we make it go faster at the end of the day and achieve
mm,
more? So I think they were some of the complementary
mm.
elements.
Hey guys, quick one before we jump back into the episode. If you are a recruiter who feels like half your week disappears into admin, follow ups, data cleaning, and jumping between several different tools, then listen up because this episode is officially sponsored by SourceWhale. SourceWhale is the recruitment productivity platform, and I don't just mean another tool that you'll forget to use, I mean the tool that actually gives you your time back. You can run your entire desk in one place. Outreach, sourcing, data enrichment, multi-step email and LinkedIn sequences, inbox management, and even call notes. It's all there, synced, automated, and according to their stats, recruiters using SourceWhale see 56% higher response rates, double the pipeline, and approximately save around 8 hours of admin every single week. If you're like me, admin as a recruiter is the devil, and this productivity platform really helps you save a load of time. So reach out to SourceWhale, go to sourcewhale.com. It's a fantastic platform. I've used it myself. I really believe in it, and I'm super grateful for them sponsoring the podcast. Let's get back into the episode. Yeah, I think that's something that's really important. When you brought up the Gymshark analogy as well, I've had these conversations in our business that when you get to a certain level, you need to really be like pretty brutally honest about what are your actual strengths, what are your weaknesses. And I always have this rule that I say to recruiters and just anyone in life is that whatever your strengths are, like you triple down on your strengths, but the things that you're not so good at, you get incrementally or, pardon the pun, like 1% better on those little things, right?
Love
But you find what you're really good at and just really triple down on that. Because I've seen so many times founders that I've coached or worked with or for that are really bad at something and they just try everything to get really good at that and they become quite mediocre at everything. But the reality is, and I remember meeting one of the I think it was the founder of S3 who said that he wasn't necessarily great at these things, so he just hired people in that were really good at those things, and
Yeah,
you tend to see that in a lot of businesses in and out of recruitment, right?
absolutely. And sport as well. I coach under 11s, under 10s, actually going into under 11s this year, football team. And we've got, a great bunch of kids. And the analogy you use there, the whole 1% better. My lad's a great example. I'll use Jude as, one of these. He's got a nice, good first touch. He's probably a little bit scared of confrontation, but he'll run all day long and he'll run down the wing and he'll get a cross in. So like putting him in a CDM position where he's got to like rat around and fight for a possession, it's not the position. So many people try and focus on people's weaknesses. And like, if you've got an 8 out of 10 recruiter or an 8 out of 10 football player, how do you get them to 9 and 10? It's probably by enhancing the strengths and
Yeah,
actually, putting them in a position where the weaknesses don't become weaknesses.
yeah.
So I was going to link that back to the World Cup game last night, but
We'll
let's not go
let's just not go there. Yeah, let's just not go there.
there.
It's a really interesting point actually, and I remember when I moved from contract to perm recruitment, and I've always had a passion for business development. I love the whole idea of pulling a job on, adding the job to the system, telling the team that you got this job on. And I remember the first person I ever hired, he could be good at BD, but he was so good at sourcing. Like he could find the needle in a haystack. His candidate qualification, the information he gathered was absolutely just world class. When it came to me pulling a job and then going, oh my God, I've got to do a Boolean search and then go on LinkedIn, like this is so long. I remember saying to my boss, like I don't enjoy that part. It's boring, right? The part I really enjoy is when you give me a big list from Zoom Info or whatever, and I just belt through that list and try and win business. That's what I'm really, really good at.
Yeah.
And when I started to have like some of my best years in recruitment was when I had this guy essentially filling all the roles and building pipeline of candidates and giving me leads, and I
Yeah.
was chasing those leads, building pipeline of clients. So
Yeah.
it's an example, right, of like you just I think it's so important to really just like knuckle down on the things that you're really good at to get like to your point from an 8 to a 9 and a bot and beyond, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm a big fan of I can't remember now. It was it the British cycling team with the whole, the 1% Sky cycling team. There's
Yeah.
a book about it, isn't there? The 1% improvements. And I think, in recruitment, I went the other way. So I was very, very strong on the candidate side and probably a little bit of a wimp when it came to BD in the first year and a
Mm.
half. Luckily, I'd got like two or three key wins in the sales recruitment space and then into the rec to rec space, which obviously BD and rec to rec for anyone that knows is like, you got a good candidate, you're going to
Yeah.
open doors left,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. 100%.
But I think for me, the learning curve was going out of the 360 space into more of an internal space, which most people say is for failed recruiters. I don't sort of believe that, if I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
honest, from someone who's done it. Because I think once you see a business from the other side, inside, and you've got the I don't know, supply chain director of AstraZeneca banging your door down saying, "Where's my effing this?" and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
don't sue me,
Mm.
AstraZeneca. But that accountability and exposure,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think then really taught me, the BD side is actually it's very relationship driven. It's very
Yeah.
solutions to problems. Everyone's got hiring challenges and needs that they need to meet. You've just got to find the way to get the conversation going with those people.
Yeah.
Um, but I agree. Yeah, focus on the strengths. If you can improve the weaknesses, great.
Yeah.
But you can easily go from a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 to a 10 or a 9.5 at least, because no one's ever a 10, right? Um, by doubling down on
Yeah.
those strengths.
100%. So when you hired your managing director, in terms of the things that you delegated, because I know that you said when we first spoke, you mentioned that, and you even said it here, that sometimes it's a little bit challenging, isn't it? Because like as you mentioned, recruiters almost naturally are quite control freaks. I say this in every academy I do, like you will become a bit of a control freak over the process, etc. But when it's your business and you've got certain things and it's the way that you've been doing it, etc., what specifically did you actually go, okay, fine, I'm just going to delegate that, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, up until probably the point Siobhan came in, I was still sending out invoices. I was still sending chasing payments in. I was still, resetting people's Microsoft password when, George from Nigeria sent an email that someone's won the Ugandan lottery or whatever it was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Classic.
All that kind of, all the, and then you get spammed. So right, password reset, all that stuff. So it was very much like hands-on. I think when Rich came in, I'd probably delegated most of the operational side of the business out, to Siobhan
Mm,
mainly, from an operations perspective. So that was probably running quite well. I think for me, it was the day-to-day, week-to-week team, and the team are amazing, right? And I'd say that even if I wasn't on live on a podcast, the
mm,
team are, superb. We've got a great bunch of individuals. I think culture was something that we probably struggled a little bit with for various reasons over the first maybe 5 or 6 years. I think for the last 2 years, certainly it's never been better. So I think helping build that culture, trust, autonomy, accountability, being world class at all the basics and the little things, I think, and then the forecasting piece. So what are we doing here? What's the process? What are our risks? Is this coming in? Is it not coming in?
mm.
Why might it come in? What are our risks? Why it might not come in? And I think that whole, the way that we track and manage data now and manage the business, we're working on like 3 month cycles, whereas I guess, 2024 cards on the table, we were working on like, can we make payroll next month? Which is, it's a nicer place to be in now. But I think, kudos to Rich there, putting in probably some of the better processes from work, working in a corporate world, like where he was at Search and I think previously Manpower or whatever it was. But also there was some big change there and big transition, going from a corporate billions in the bank
Mm,
PEC backed business to, Ash's business,
mm.
Ash's mortgage is on the line, Ash's house is on the line, Ash's
Yeah,
fourth child, it's a very different scenario. So I think, it's probably good guess for you to understand the other side coming
yeah,
into his business. You'll have to get Rich on. But yeah, I think for me it was the bits like, reviews, monthly catch-ups, weekly kind of operations
Mm.
meetings. It allowed me to get out of the kind of weeds and
Yeah.
get above, they say, don't they, in the business and on the business. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I was very much in the business. And I think being able to get my head above the parapet, dodge a few bullets along the way, but see, right, where are we heading? What's
Hmm.
our strategy? What markets do we want to be famous for? How does this all fit together? What's the brand story? What does that mean to customers? What does that mean to candidates? What does it mean to our colleagues and the people that are on the journey with AJ? And really like build something meaningful and purposeful
Mm.
there. And I think, again, if you look at that then from like an operational managing director role, Rich has done a great job with the team, and it's allowed me to help sort of steer the ship and get the right people on the bus. Interestingly, the thing that I've not delegated and continued to do, what I think really well, and I can blow my own trumpet there, is
Mm.
bringing like world-class people to the business. So, the last 7 hires that we've made since 2024, 2025, I think only one of them's come via somebody else's network.
Okay.
And we're talking, really, really quality people. So
Mm.
Hey, if you're a founder or a leader within a recruitment business and any of these problems resonate, I'd urge you to reach out to me. If you notice inconsistent performance across the sales team, if you notice that you're trying to scale your business, but it's not really sustainable the way that you're doing it, and perhaps you're in that tricky situation where new people are coming into the business, draining the time of billing managers and senior consultants, and the top billers are being diluted by those guys, and it's quite difficult to upskill the trainee consultants, and typically that ends up in having retention issues. If any of those problems resonate with you at all, it's worth us having a conversation. We are currently building something that I firmly believe is going to completely change L&D and recruitment, and I'd love to tell you a little bit about what we're doing, get your insights on that, and perhaps it might be something I could personally help with. So yeah, if any of those problems resonate even slightly, reach out to me. All my details below this video. Let's have a chat.
Yeah, nice. Okay. Well, there's loads to unpack there. There's one thing that I wanted to pry into before I go on to the next thing, because I want to talk about, like, you've already kind of mentioned some of the things that you're currently doing at the minute. So I'll go into that in a sec. Remind
yeah,
me. But you mentioned there was like a dip in the culture. We talked about some podcasts, right? And I've made a bit of a conscious effort that I don't want podcasts that I do to always just be about, oh, we're billing £250 million a month and everything's amazing, right? I think it's important to share, like, the challenges and, like, when things have like not necessarily gone great. When you say like the culture was like not great before and obviously now it has got a lot better, what do you think that was kind of down to, and how did you kind of change that?
I think there's a few reasons there, or contributing factors. So number one would probably be bandwidth for me. Like, I'd like to think I'm a good leader. I like to think I'm a fair, manager of people. I
Hmm.
give people trust. People don't have to earn trust with me. People get trust from day one, and then if they break it, I've got a very hard, hard and fast rule, which is once, fine, two, we're done. Um, I think I had quite a lot of commitments. So I was a, co-founder in Essentia. I was a co-founder in Intro. I'd got a tier point. I'd made an investment into a mobile, random one, but mobile phone recycling business called Tech Octopus. And we were kind of building this, little e-commerce disruptor in the, circular economy world, which I guess with, rising costs and people less likely to upgrade their phone directly with networks, it made good decision to do that. Anyway, egg on face didn't work. Ended up, getting out of that. But I had quite a lot of things going on. And I think when you try and focus on everything, something has to give. And if you think, you've got 100% energy to give and you're trying to give 100% to 5 things, very quickly that becomes 20% to one, 30% to another, 10% to another. And I think that also sort of rang true with like relationships with other co-founders. So everybody wanted more than I could probably commit to.
Mm.
And also that wasn't fair for them that I couldn't commit anymore, but it was also the deal that we did at the start.
Yeah.
So I know we got a section later on around investing and in being invested in, and
Hmm.
obviously some massive learning curves there from my side. But I think, when you kind of we'd got like 4 businesses in one hub. So we'd got like the AJ 2 desks, we've got an
Mm.
Essentia desk, we've got an intro desk, and everyone was kind of collaborating, which is great for early stage businesses where you're your office is your bedroom or a little coffee shop down the road.
Yeah.
You don't want to go spending thousands of pounds. We were spending 80 grand with CBRE with, a massive office in Manchester. It was great. Talent walked through the door. They were like, wow, I want to work here. This is amazing. But I think the benefit very much went to the kind of co-founders more than it went to AJ. And I think the team very quickly felt that. And it was like, well, is this AJ or is this kind of like some concoction mixed bag of, 4 or 5 different businesses? Similarities in commission schemes, slightly different commission scheme over there. Well, why do they get 25% of everything when we only get 20% of something? And it's like very quickly became apparent that I think the issue was sort of, quite clear.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably one of the things. I could have managed that better. I'm, big on vulnerability and, holding the mirror up. I had a couple of conversations with some very successful, I wouldn't say coaches or mentors, but people who'd gone and done amazing things in this industry. And both of them said, whatever you do, Ash, go all in on one thing. Because if you've got a plan B and a plan C and a plan D and a plan E, plan A is dog shit because you're not all in.
Yeah.
And I kind of ignored that advice against very, very strong, capable people. Not through ego or any other reason than I wanted to prove people that I could do that.
Yeah.
And there's a little part of me, I wear my heart on my sleeve. And I remember my teachers at school, you're going to go on and do nothing in life. You're a bum, you're a this, you're a that.
Yeah.
Those teachers that think they know everything, that ultimately, no disrespect if anyone's partner's a teacher, but if you're a teacher, like,
if you're one of those teachers, you can, mind my language, get fucked. Like there's nice teachers out there, but when you were saying that, I had one of those smiles on my face because I had the exact same thing. Like I was that typical student in class that it's just so boring in school. Like 9 times out of 10, people can sit there and take notes. My school was not a great school, and I used to get kicked out all the time. Not for anything terrible. I wasn't like very, very bad child, but like it was so boring, so I couldn't sit still. The teacher would be like, "Stop fidgeting, stop talking, stop distracting the class." I'm like, "I'm not talking. Will you backchat me?" "No, I'm not backchatting you. Right, you're out." And then you have those conversations in the hall after you've been out of maths class for 45 minutes of an hour lesson. You're not going to make anything. You're not going to be anything in life if you carry on the way you're going.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like, and I know a lot of people have had a similar thing, mate. It's rough.
100%. It is. I'll keep the conspiracy theories to the minimum, but like, the education system, I think, is flawed in many ways. Like, you very quickly realize that the entrepreneurs, the successful people, the people that are doing things and moving the economy, moving the needle, probably got D's, C's, E's, U's, F's, and some FU's to teachers. But it is what it is.
The amount of people on this podcast, we're coming up to 100 episodes soon, and a lot of which have been founders, recruitment founders, RecTech founders, many of which didn't go uni, didn't get necessarily a great education. The ones that do well, that did go through school, are the ones that were kindly put on the spectrum, that go and do like software engineering, that kind of stuff. They just get their head down, they're not overly distractible. But you're right, like a lot of the entrepreneurs that, especially in recruitment, a lot of us are riddled with ADHD, mate, let's be honest.
I've never done the tests. I've never wanted to put a label on myself, but my eldest is going through his GCSEs at the moment, and we've got like friends' parents who've got a kid at the same age, and we're really good friends, and each of their own. You parent your way, we'll parent our way. It's like 7 hours revision at the weekends, 4 hours of an evening homework, and like micromanaging it. Both teachers, lovely people, amazing friends. From our side, we were like, look, Arch, he's my eldest, Archie, 16. It doesn't matter. You can apply yourself and you can go and prove everybody right or wrong either way, but you're not going to get a second chance to do it. And if you do get a second chance of doing it, that's probably a waste of time. So put your effort in now. The outcome will be the outcome. Just control, I guess, the inputs to a level you're comfortable with. But that guy, my eldest, he's destined to be, a business owner. He buys and sells, clothing stuff and bits. And
was he that kid in school selling cans of Coke, by the way?
Always. I was the same. I'd go to Quick Save opposite high school, and I'd go into Quick Save and I'd buy like a load of multi-packs of like Coca-Cola. God help everyone who's got diabetes now from the Ash Night tuck shop. But it was just, you want to make money, don't you, as a kid? And you want to buy nice things and put yourself in a place where you can make choices. And I think that
100%.
for me an early sign that yeah, I'm probably the most unemployable person in the world, in my own world anyway.
Mm,
I'm sure there's worse and better, but for me, going out and work it like I worked with a very successful up until probably around the point where I left, and well, it all went to shit. Pardon my French, but
mm.
he ended up suing me for like 126 grand. But
Fuck.
like, yeah, we can get into that. But like, I helped build that business. I was like the talent man. I was
Mm,
the internal rec to rec, going out and finding recruiters. We grew from 8 people. I was employee number 8 to 90 something. Got into like the Sunday Times, Fast Track, Virgin Fast Track, Recruiter Hot 100. We got awards. I know you buy some of those and whatever, but yeah, we got some real traction. And then yeah, I went to the boss, said, "Hey, look, I think I just hit like 200 odd percent of quota. We got amazing people in the business. We were doing ridiculous numbers. We were like, 100% growth year on year, 5 years running.
mm.
And I had my bonus meeting, and this is, it's part of the problem with the industry, right? Founders get greedy sometimes, and I got like 40% of my bonus instead of 200% of my bonus, and I went
Mm.
petulant as hell. Company's house, right? Fuck this, Ash Night recruitment,
Mm.
whatever it was. Set up the business ready to trade for a future date. Went in a few weeks later, said, "Hey boss, I'm out. I'm going to go and do this on my own. If you want to come with me and like invest and stuff, we could do something together. If you don't, I'm going to be doing rec to rec. I'll find amazing people." Um, and then yeah, I got locked in a boardroom, um, literally like key shut,
You know.
retained lawyer. 1 hour
Jesus
later,
Christ.
IT director, ops director, hacking into my LinkedIn, exporting all my messages, blocked me out of LinkedIn, wiped my, iPhone, you have the iCloud thing, or I have my
Mm.
work emails. Apparently, this was a thing. They completely wiped my iPhone after like downloading all the information. All my childhood pics of my kids had gone,
Oh,
all the pictures
mate.
of like early dating with the missus, and yeah, the whole thing was just like, and then yeah, went home, told the missus what had happened, rang her from the car, like practically shaking like a nervous wreck.
Yeah, I bet.
My God, I'm gonna lose everything. And then yeah, lawsuit, 18 months of litigation. I was that paranoid, like I locked my not that I had anything to hide, but I was so paranoid because these lawyers kept turning up on door, like mountains of paperwork and
Fuck.
disclosure and all this shit. I put my phone and my a laptop in the oven when we went on holiday. I like thought,
Jeez.
where's the last place if someone breaks into my house to try and find any
Not gonna
threat,
be the fucking oven.
put it in the oven. And then we got back and started to cook stuff, and I was like, what's that? Put the oven on preheat. Shit.
Fuck, man. Oh, mate, that's
Anyway, that's another
brutal.
story. But I can't remember where we were going with that. Apologies, but
No, it's fine. That's a savage story. It's interesting though, isn't it? In like, I was speaking to so I went on the Gig It Arrest podcast, and I've got Luke coming on my show in a few weeks' time, and we were sharing stories about how let's call it rascal the recruitment industry is, and like
mm,
I've only left one of my jobs on good terms, and every other job I've had have just left on not the greatest of terms, and I haven't had anything near as bad as that, but I've had one where my sales director pulled me aside, and basically the market was collapsing beneath us. All my contractors were gone. I had like 80, 90 runners, not all at once, but like in my book that could be working at any time, all gone overnight, just completely gone. And
well,
he just pulled me aside and was like, "Look, the grass ain't always greener, but if you don't think you can hack this market, just go and find something new." And obviously, I took it super literally, and I was like, "Oh, I suppose this is like my time to go and find something new." So I spoke to this rec to rec. She was amazing, this lady called Heidi. And when I told her like how we operated, she was like, what the fuck? Like, that's not how a legit business operates. Like, that is terrible. And I was like,
that's a
really?
car park chat if I ever heard one.
Mad. So she wrote this post about this 23-year-old who's thwarted by poor management, destined to work in the city. This is their profile. And it was like, if you read it, if you knew me, you'd be like, that could be Charles. But like, it wasn't me. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, I
Yeah.
liked the post because we didn't use LinkedIn. So I didn't know how LinkedIn works. So I didn't know that if I liked it, everyone in my network can see that I've liked this post. So the sales director's gone, Anna, mate, you got a minute? I'm like, yeah, all right, like that. They printed the fucking post off and was like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, I don't know. I just saw that post. It resonated, so I liked it. And it was like, that's clearly you. Got the compliance manager in. She was just like, "Are you looking for a new job?" And I was like, "Well, no, but he did say I could look for a new job." And they were just like, "All right, well, look, go and get your bag. We're just gonna basically just send you home for the day, and we'll speak in the morning. And like, I was a bit like, what the fuck? I've got candidates to speak to. It's like, don't worry, we'll deal with it. When you're like 22, 23 years old, you're a bit naive to it. So you're like, oh, all right, cool. So I left, and I'm like, next morning, I get a text from a manager saying like, but like, don't come in. Like, just don't come in today. We're sorting some shit out. And I was like, well, I've done nothing wrong. I was like, what's going on? So then I get like a fucking proper formal email, basically like there's going to be an external HR consultant, external legal like solicitor, the MD is going to be there, the FD, the SD, like everyone's going to be at this meeting. So you can get like a witness, but they can't interject in the meeting. I was like, okay. In my mind, I'm like, this is a bit excessive for just liking a LinkedIn post. Do you know what I mean? This is very, very excessive. So I come in and it's like, I'm not joking, like a board table with like 6 people. And then my apprentice tutor, Martin, is just sat there by my side. And they're literally like, right, do you recognize this name of this candidate? I'm like, yeah. Okay. Do you recognize this name of this candidate? It's like, yeah. Did you call this candidate on this date at this time? I was like, don't know. I'd have to check my phone. Did you? Yes or no? I was like, I think so. Yeah. Okay. That day you were at home, right? I was like, yeah. Okay. Right. So strike that on the record. So he's taken candidates from the business to his home. Okay. So what about this candidate here? And I was like, no. Actually, no. There's 2 candidates, similar name. Put this on the record. He's lying. So, and I was like, no. What's going on? What's going on? It's like, what's happening? And I started to get well flustered. And like, I used to have bad anxiety when I was like in my early 20s and just couldn't deal with the pressure and stuff. I was like, what's going on? What's going on? And then Martin was just like, just chill out, whatever. It's fine. You'll be fine. Then they physically escorted me off the premises, right? Like physically, like
Marched out,
literally
like, yeah.
grabbed me like that. I was like, come on. I was like, you don't have to like, I'll walk. It's fine. I was like, no. Like, and it was one of them ones where I'm like, all right, don't touch me. Don't touch me. Like 80 people in the office. So I was like, what's going on? What's going on? And I was just like, what the fuck? So I've gone out the office, called my mum, like, I think I've just been fired. I don't really understand why. Like, I don't really know. And I didn't have enough money in my bank account to like get a lawyer myself. So I've then called up, is it ACAS or something like that? Like spoke to this lady, told her what's going on. And she was just like, look, you can go through it, but then if you go tribunal, it's quite long. We might be able to get you some cash. And then that rectorate called me and was like, right, got you an interview at this company. Go and see these guys. Interviewed them. I was like, this is my dream company. Like, if I could get this job, I don't care about not having the money. These guys can go fuck themselves. This is going to be amazing. I ended up getting like 600 quid from those guys, which is peanuts. But I literally used that for my train fare for the first quarter of my new job. And then the rest is history. But it's mental that shit like that happens, mate. It's mental.
It's so rogue. Crazy. But the reason I was saying that, I've just remembered, was like working with a founder that close, growing a business and seeing the nuts and bolts of it all. I think, when it comes to how to get ahead and 1% better and, invest in and all that kind of stuff, I think, it kind of each their own, but it baffles me how someone can go to, a Hayes or a Michael Page or a Robert Walters, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, don't sue me. No pun intended, but like, and climb the corporate ladder. It's like great, moving upwards and stuff, but I don't know, like it just feel, again, it might be me, it might be the way my brain works, but it's like you've got to build something, you've got to have purpose, you've got to be like all in your desk, all in the mission, you've got to be aligned with your business, the values. Like there's so many people out there doing all these like, oh, let's come and do a consultation around, culture and values, and it's all very HR. But I think from a founder and to people that like have a genuine mission to get somewhere and do something and achieve something, which you should find in the interview process. It's like, right, well, how does their vision, how does their goals, how does their life plan align with our business, and what can our business then do for these people? Like last year we ran a workshop for everyone on investing. We got like a financial guru guy, we put some slides together, we put a load of research together, and it was like, look, instead of taking all this commission and going and buying not that we're this kind of business, but go and buy a bottle of Verve at the weekend with sparklers in it and live the credit card, like Instagram lifestyle, why don't you do a salary sacrifice and, rather than earning 100 grand and then losing your personal allowance, why don't you put the difference into pensions? Why don't, like all these little tricks that nobody teaches you and they'll never teach this in education. Like, a load of our guys now, they opt to put commission into pensions, which is like great for them, way more tax efficient. It's like a tax efficiency for the business. And obviously for them, it's like that pot, it allows them to get off the bus at 40, 45, 50, rather than we're probably going to be retiring at like what, 80, 83, the way it's going for people. So, for us, it's like, I think, as a business owner and a founder, you've got to look at like you work for the people.
I love that. Yeah.
You've got to find ways where you can help these people like by helping you, because ultimately they're doing a great job billing, making money, earning, revenue for the business, solving problems for clients, helping candidates improve their lifestyles, because that promotion helps them get better holidays, or put kids into private school, whatever those, like, again, their ambitions may be. It kind of all interconnects. And I think it's probably only clicked to me in the last probably 3 or 4 years that that's one part of how you like build culture. And we, like, rightly or wrongly, we've had 0% attrition for like 2 years, which in recruitment is pretty good. Don't get me wrong, that won't always be 0%. There'll always be someone that isn't quite pulling their weight, and someone hopefully with a talent pipeline, banging the door on, wanting to come and be involved in what we're doing. But I think those little tweaks and those little things that we've implemented has helped.
Yeah. I think what you said there, by the way, about like getting like a financial advisor into the business for recruiters is that's one of the most amazing things to do for young recruiters, because I would say I was like okay with money. Like my mum's like very good with money, quite frugal, she's very entrepreneurial. Always growing up, like if she gave me a £5 note for pocket money, which nowadays buys you one sweet, but it would be like go and buy something and then literally save a couple of pounds. And all my uncles, if they ever gave me cash for my birthday, put it in your savings, make sure it's a high interest savings. Like, but no one really spoke to me much about investments and stuff. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is that I've seen too many times working in recruitment businesses where, and look, I'm not saying there's necessarily anything overly wrong with this. If this is the way you want to run your culture, go for it. I don't care. But when I see like, and I spoke to that guy Luke about this yesterday, when you've got like a 20-odd-year-old who's starting to earn really good money, and then they're just literally spunking it up the wall, going out, and like you said, the perfect phrase, living that Instagram lifestyle when they're on an average salary, but they're earning good commission for the first time in their life. And it's like, okay, like as a founder, as a leader, sit down with that person and go, look, you're starting to earn really good money, but you probably never had this type of money before. What do you actually want in life? Like, let's face it, most people, it's I want to buy a brand new car or a nice car. I want to save to get a mortgage, deposit on a house, etc. Cool, we can get those things. And for people listening, you'll be surprised in recruitment how fucking quickly that can actually happen. I've seen people, and it's happened to myself, where like I want to buy a new car. 3 months later, I've already got the money. I'm like, what the fuck? I didn't think that was possible. But then actually thinking really smartly, like if you're starting to earn 5, 10, 15, 20 grand commission per month, actually what can you do to start making your money work for you so that you're not stressed and you can still fucking enjoy yourself? But do you know what I mean? I think that for kudos to you, mate, because not enough founders actually do that.
Agreed. Every pound has to have a job. Like in my world, like we keep very little cash. Sorry about I'm in my garden room, by the way. So like if you hear birds and
I'm all good. It's all good. Yeah, it's all good.
It's not some like holistic nature podcast. But yeah, like from a personal perspective, we try and keep like little cash, because if we've got cash in the bank, it's being eroded with inflation. The way they're printing money and stuff in the markets, debasement of currency is one of our strategies. So they're printing money left, right, and center. Assets are going to go up. So if I was the recruiter that wanted the new car, my advice to the recruiter that wants the new car is, well, why do you need the new car? Like the new car is going to go down in value. So can you lease the new car? How much does it cost to lease a new car? Oh, well, it's 400 quid a month, right? Well, if you've got 20 grand to put into something, buy a flat on a 80 grand flat, buy to let mortgage, put that down as your deposit, bit of stamp duty on top, the rental income from your tenant or from Airbnb or whatever it may be, if you got the right area. An 80 grand flat Airbnb, I don't know how questionable that is, but it's probably like
80 grand will get you not even a bedroom in the south. So just
in the south, we're talking north there, right? I'd be buying the asset that's going to cash flow me the money to pay for the car.
Right.
Where I was, I'd be going. But again, it's each to their own. I think people like shiny things. And from my own experience, I had the nice cars, the nice watches and stuff, but sold it all in the last 6 to 12 months. So I've had like the opposite. I hit 40 in October, and I've had the antithesis of a midlife crisis. So rather than going out and buying the fancy cars and blah, blah, blah,
got rid of it all.
I've just got rid of it all.
Wow,
so
fair.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. I spoke to somebody about that this week, actually, about like when you're young in recruitment, like, especially if you've not really earned money and you start earning money, I was 21 and I bought my first nice watch. I started building watch collections of like fucking Armani watches and like bullshit watches. And my uncle, who like is very knowledgeable of those types of things, he was like, mate, you need to buy like a Swiss watch, like one
Yeah.
that won't depreciate. Like, you'll look back at it in 10 years' time and you can give it to your kids or the rest of it. And he always used to have Cartier. So when I was 21, I bought a Cartier just outright and I was like, this is fucking sick. I've
Yeah.
not worn the fucker since my wedding, which is
Yeah.
like 3 years ago. I've just not worn it. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't really see a point. I've got one of the fitness watches. I just don't really care.
Yeah.
Like, all designer gear, don't buy any of it anymore. I used to be like, I'm terrible with clothes. I don't buy clothes. The clothes I have are just from like Christmas presents and shit. I just don't. I used to buy like brand new suits, custom
Yeah.
suits, and Armani this and all the rest of it. Now I'm just like, no,
No.
can't. That's just not interesting at all.
Get me in Zara any day of the week. 20 quid t-shirt, fine.
Yeah, absolutely,
But
mate.
yeah, no, you look at like, I guess I've been involved in sport, not at a high level, but been around that kind of community. I played golf with Robbie Fowler, Lee Sharp, various these very successful
Mm,
kind of 90s, 2000s footballers, and they had amazing people around. Some of them, obviously, a lot of didn't, and this is the problem where Robbie Fowler owns like half of Liverpool, but he had someone clever going, right, son, you're earning good money now. You need to
mm,
yes, you need to build something for the future. This football career is short. And I think there's probably a gap in the market for somebody in the recruitment industry. I don't know if there is a person doing this, but to kind of, put their arm around recruiters that are starting to earn that life-changing money and help them make better decisions because, you know, sparklers in bottles of Moe and whatever at, the club, 250, 300 quid a throw, probably more now with inflation. Like, you're just gonna have a sore head the next day and a
yeah.
credit card bill. So
Yeah, mate. You know what? I look back and like one thing I'm so grateful for is when I was like doing the best in my career, I didn't know that President's Club was a thing, right? And when I saw that that was an incentive, I was like, well, I'm never going to not go on that. Like I have to hit those targets to go there, whether I'm a biller or a billing manager. So I was able to go and travel to a variety of countries, go to Ibiza, go to Marbella, go to all the nicest restaurants in London, like get suits made for me, like all paid from the business and stuff. And like when I first met my now wife, and I think she was going to Ibiza a year after when we first started meeting, and I was like, I've been there. She's like, is it quite expensive? And I was like, I'll be honest, I didn't spend a penny. I've been 3 times. I think I've spent a tenner when I went to the shop to go and get some waters for the room. Like I haven't spent anything. So I'm
yeah,
so grateful. Like this is going to sound wrong. I don't mean it to sound like this, but like as a recruiter, you can almost use the business by being successful to have those experiences, to go and fly off to the Caribbean, all inclusive. Like
mm,
that's an aspect. If you're fucking good at this job, you can travel and you can do all these really cool things and earn the money and stuff.
yeah,
But I think you're right, mate. I think there is. I'm not by any means like an expert when it comes to the finances, but like there's definitely something there for people to just, yeah, like you said, what that Robbie Fowler analogy is perfect for some recruiters.
yeah, yeah. And the younger players nowadays coming through, I think they've got better. The clubs have like a moral sort of duty of care now to these
Mm,
people to help them. Like I can't remember who it was now, but one of the I think it was the Liverpool players like turned up. They just signed their first professional contract, rocked up in a Eurus, and I think Klopp ripped him a new one and was like, mate, get that fucking car out of this car park. You never be seen. They took it off him
yeah.
kind of thing and find him. Because I think it's one of those, isn't it? You want that level of like humility. And I guess as a 18-year-old lad just signed your first professional contract, is it right to be driving around in a Urus or a G-Wagon or whatever? Or should you be tooting around in a little, 55 plate Corsa, proving yourself on the pitch and then let the cars and the fast stuff come later?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we talk about the investments, one thing I wanted to just touch on when you hired your MD,
Mhm.
what were like the triggers for you? Like, what was the thing that made you go, okay, fine, like I need to hire an MD now?
Yeah, it's it's an interesting one because I think this has probably changed and evolved over probably the last 2 years, right?
Hmm.
So initially, I needed more bandwidth, as we said before, for these other, co-founder relationships. One of them was struggling at the time, needed a bit more time and love and support. One of them was flying, and we just needed to like nail the strategy. One was an interesting one where I kind of, invested and joined to build a formidable business in one niche, and then quickly, one person's vision for the business went here, and mine was here. And anyway, the whole point of it was, I guess, to buy more time. And I think having then like the hindsight, looking back, coming out of those businesses has been the best thing I've done in the last 12 to 18 months. more family time, more school runs, more time for me. I'm probably in the best shape I've ever been. My golf game's good. But also, the kind of plug in the weaknesses and doing the things that I love.
Mm.
So, manually processing payroll on a last Friday of the month, or, running through commission clawbacks and quibbles because somebody hasn't, started a job on time, or like letting go of all that. Like,
Mm.
and I get it because you know, it's it's important stuff, right? You've got to run a good business where if stuff like that happens, you've got to deal with it. Secondly, if that person then's like, I've got bills to pay, blah blah blah, we'll always do the right thing in those scenarios. But just coming out of those weeds and getting out of you know, the kind of, I don't know what you call it, like, what would you call that stuff? Like, not drama, because it's not drama, but
Mm. It's almost
just,
like the operational trenches almost.
yeah,
Rather
yeah,
than like you got like the sales trenches in a recruitment business, like you got like the people trenches and then like the operational stuff. Like I've seen it before with like founders that they are also speaking to candidates, clients. They're also sat on desk doing the desk coaching. They are trying to run sessions and go, right, okay, we've got this new process. Let's all get in a boardroom, etc. And then they're also sat there with their finance person running payroll. They're also changing passwords, like you said, and they're doing those things. And I
yeah,
think, to your point, like if you have the facilities to do so, to then get somebody to go, take over certain aspects, then by all means, it sounds like it's paid off big time, right?
yeah. I think you've got to delegate, haven't you? Like, to build anything with a little bit of scale and momentum, you've got to hire exceptional people, or great people that can be even better, or good people that can be great, and work with them to develop that journey, and also then get out of their way. Because every decision up until probably Rich came in started and stopped with me.
Mm.
But there a lot of times where stuff's happened in the business last week. I won't go into details, but like, I only found out about it today on our ops meeting, because it's been dealt with and it's been handled. And there's a price to pay for that, which is an MD salary and equity and other stuff that's that's there. But I think it's like, it's the gift that keeps on giving if you get it right. But I also know a lot of people who've got it massively wrong. They've
Mm.
brought someone in, they've given the keys, and then 5, 6 years later, there was a Cheshire-based business, quite a well-known one, that 6 years later, the founder's back on the tools, and various other bits and pieces. So I think it's got to be right for you. It's got to be the right decision. It's got to be the right person. I think the values and moral compass alignment has to be right. I think you've got to be able to learn from that person and get value for you. I think they've got to kind of help lift you in, if it's a chairman MD role, or if it's a founder MD, which is our sort of dynamic. Like, we're not big on job titles and posh, there's no name plaques on desks or
Yeah,
anything.
yeah,
But it's just got to work. And I think I had the benefit that I knew Rich from previous. Whereas I guess if I was going out, let's say this whole 2 year thing didn't happen and I was now going out to market,
be a lot
I,
harder. It'd be
it
a
would
lot
be,
harder to bring someone into like the analogy you gave around giving the keys to someone that you've only known throughout an interview process
yeah,
is challenging, right?
yeah. I saw a post on LinkedIn, I think it was today, Chris over at SR2, I don't know if you know him.
Familiar with
Played
him,
golf
yeah.
with him a couple of times.
Mm.
Great guy, awesome business. I think he's just done the same. So I think he's stepping down now as a CEO. And they're doing obscene numbers, big contract business, lots of like ex S3
Mm.
Opus high performing people. And I think they've just announced, I think it was one of the COO of Opus to join, and he'll be going through that whole transition. So I guess part two, and probably a better episode than this one, would be Chris's journey in 3, 6 months time once that's happened. So but yeah, I think finding someone from scratch, it's probably like needle in a haystack. Whereas I think leveraging that network and the people and who's who in the industry, that's got to be the way to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, 100%. It's like the first bit of advice I got when I first went solo to do my consultancy. I called my NLP coach and I was like, fucking petrified. I've got, about 10 grand in savings and that's it. And I've got no clients, I've got no network. And he was like, all right, you do have a network. You might not necessarily have like thousands, but you do know people. And his first bit of advice was lean on your network. He's like, start speaking to people. And the funniest thing was like, you'll be surprised at how much people will want to help you, especially when you're new. And my best year was my first year because everyone was like, "Oh, give you a punt." Like,
Yeah.
you're starting your business. Absolutely, come on in. It was great. And then you finish your first year, and people are like, "Oh, you've been in business for a year now. You're a big boy."
Yeah.
It's like, oh fuck, it's
Oh,
actually
yeah.
really hard.
We
But
had it.
it is. It's
Yeah.
like it's leaning on your network and people that I've spoken to that have hired, senior people into the business. Like I worked at a company that when he was in a similar situation, was like, doing everything as the MD, as the founder, CEO. He brought on a sales director who I don't know if he managed him or I can't remember. I think he may have managed him or just knew him very well. And obviously went through a bit of a rigorous interview process. But again, to your point, values completely aligned. The mission, like where he wanted to take the business, they were both aligned. And Liam, who was the sales director, he was my best ever manager of all time. It was just absolutely fucking phenomenal. And now he's smashing it out in America for that business. I think he's like the VP or MD for their American business, but absolutely smashing it. Before we wrap up then, mate, because I know that you're gagging to talk about the investment stuff, and we've touched a little bit on it. You've said the good, the bad, the ugly. And as people probably know it by this point, we've obviously just completed our fundraise, our investment round a couple of weeks ago now. And in hindsight, like I remember sitting down with one of the first investor, well, the first ever investor we sat down with, and he said, "You guys had it so easy." But from my perspective, and to anyone that's gone through raising money, the first time you do it, it seems like it's the hardest thing in the world. And what you were saying earlier around spreading yourself a bit thin, I do everything for the podcast, got a coaching business, baby's about to turn 1. So 6 months ago when we were first starting to raise money, obviously not
That's a
sleeping.
full-time job on its
That's a
own.
full-time job.
Yeah.
Also trying to be a present husband, trying to pay bills and just so much going on. But the reality is towards the end, like the second investor came in, and 6 days later he signed the shareholders agreement and stuff. But I know that from people I'm speaking to that are still fundraising, like 2 years down the line, and speaking to investors that have made some really, really, really good investments and some really, really bad ones. But you've certainly had your own journey, right?
Yeah, I have. It's interesting because I'm a massive believer in fate, right? Everything happens for a reason. So
Mm,
you had conversations that you were excited about that didn't go the distance. And then obviously the one that did was probably the one that was a little bit of a surprise, but everything just clicked into place. And I
yeah.
think, from what you said last week as well, those synergies around experience, market exposure, background, culture fit, alignment, like you got to just put yourself in these positions, I think, by doing the reps, having the conversations, using the network, reaching out to people. From my side, I think what's really disappointing about the whole thing is we've never really experienced the highs. You see these people that have like, oh, I had 10 million exit and 5 million exit and 4 million EBIT and contract book of 100 grand a week. Like we'd never really experienced any of those things. I think the positives, like so one of the first investments I ever did was my kind of 2018. We went into SaaS, so we were rec to rec, and then we started doing like the complementary sectors, which naturally was sales, very much around like FMCG, food, like food tech, that kind of
Mm,
stuff. And we kind of stumbled upon an opportunity again, someone I'd placed previously, where it was like, right, well, we can build a tech sales business, and we can kind of piggyback off because great recruiters make great SaaS salespeople. Good SaaS salespeople make great like strategic BD type people in
mm,
recruitment. So there's a bit of synergy there. We grew the business. I think it did 200 grand year one, 600 grand year two, £1 million year three in fees. Biggest mistake, headcount. Never grow a business based on headcount.
mm,
Never ever will I ever even set a headcount target ahead, ever again. We were very much like, I even remember sitting next to like the co-founder at the time, great sales guy, probably one of the best BD people I've ever worked with. And the sales pitch to any talent looking to join the business was, we've got X amount of people in X locations. And whether it was ego or not, I don't know. It was a great journey. Kind of fizzled out, wanted different things, pulled in different directions. Every business that we've done seemed to leapfrog the last one in
mm.
terms of speed. And I was like, for me, one of the first milestones you can get to in any business is, how do we get 1 million fees through the door? So that one took 3 years. The next one we did 2 years. The one after that did just under a year. The one after that, we were kind of well, sorry, just over a year and then just under a year. So every business was like flywheel was turning quicker. I think I would say, and I think most of the people, if you ask them, I brought a lot of value early doors.
Mm.
Everything from strategy, operational, tech stack, contracts, systems, AI, automations, all the kind of stuff that if you were setting up on your own website, marketing, LinkedIn pages, it's quite daunting. And obviously then the financial and operational piece, which, kudos to Siobhan, she helped with a little bit of that for some of the kind of connected companies. And was, took a lot of bandwidth, or give me more bandwidth, sorry, and took a lot off my plate. I think I forgot where I was going with that now, but the kind of year one, year two value was like through the roof. And then I think once we'd got through that initial part, and then it was like, right, we're going to grow and this. And there was probably like, how would you describe it now? There was a time where one of my co-founders was like, right, you need to put your sword and your shield on and you need to go back on the tools and BD and build a desk. And I'm there in 16 years in the industry, only really internally recruiting recruiters for these businesses for the last bit. Obviously doing some deals on the side for the AJ business, but I think I built about 300 grand in revenue last year still as a, founder and on a contract basis, like little mic drop, rug my own shoulders, whatever. But, to then be asked to go and do that in a new business that, we'd got to £1 million pretty much year one, we were tracking for 1.5 to 2 year two. And then like the disagreements, culture, some toxic stuff and behaviors going on, like a few of the team sort of coming to me like, Ash, what do you think about this? And I'm like, I don't want to undermine a co-founder. So yeah, it's frustrating because we've never really there's no $1 million bank balance off the back of these investments. Some have gone really well. I invested in two lads, years and years and years ago. Talk is the name, TORQUE, Henry and Harry. They've gone on and built a really, really cool business. But again, year one, year two really struggled, but got on to do, amazing things. So I think for me, what would I suggest? So if I was looking for investment, the kind of things, number one, do you really need investment? Because, you can go to the British Business Bank or the BCRS, whatever it is, you can get a 25 grand loan, you can probably pay it back in 600 quid a month installments. I don't know if you've read the Gordon Ramsay thing, and he did the high performance podcast, like when he was looking for investment to go and get his first Claridge's or whatever restaurant, he went to his father-in-law and he was like, mate, when you sell the fucking Porsche, I'll put more money in. And
I've heard stories like that. Yeah.
So do you really need the investment? Can you make it work? Like in my case, I'd got 18 grand saved up. That was enough for me to probably cover 6 months of overheads. Mrs. on maternity, needed to go and make it work quickly. Did a deal after like 11 days out of necessity, court case going on, massive legal bills.
Yeah.
The 18 grand quickly got swallowed up in litigation costs. And I had the world's best and worst solicitor at the time. Again, very naive, should have gone big heavyweight Harvey Specter style, and ended up with a guy, God bless him, like amazing friend. But his logo was like a farmer's gate, and his field of expertise was like agricultural
God
or something. Like country bumpkin there, right? So it was never going to go well. But I think for me, are you looking for investment, or are you looking for like someone to hold your hand and help you? There's a value that you can probably pay for with mentoring or coaching or whatever, where someone can help you not make the mistakes that they've made and other people are likely to make.
Yeah.
Number two, I'd say, what are you actually putting on the line yourself? So are you selling the Porsche? Have you remortgaged your house? Have you gone to the bank and asked for a loan? Because if you're not willing to back yourself, why should anyone back you? And that's the biggest one for me. I think number two, I think you've got, you see it all the time on like these Instagram influencer type stuff, but you've got Alex Hormozy's like amazing at this. You've got to find your niche, and average fees need to be probably 10, 15K plus. You need to be highly profitable with every person you make, doing probably 2 deals a month, 5 a quarter as a run rate. Ideal, are you going to get, 70? Are you going to go all perm to begin with and then blend in contract? Are you going to double down, get contract going and then build perm? I think you've got to know your numbers, know your sector. Like the founding team is another piece. I'm a big fan. Like one's cool. What's the phrase? Is it two's company, three's the crowd?
Something like that. Yeah. Two's party, three's the crowd, something like that. Yeah.
Like that. So for me, like every successful or more successful one had two co-founders. Anywhere where there was three or more, like, is a disaster. The benefit of having three, I guess, is, also the curse, which is, if you're equal shareholding 33, someone's potentially going to get stuffed at some point when two people gang up against the third, and it all ends in tears. But yeah, that founding team, proven success. Where have they done it before? How do they do it? How are they going to do it again? Which is the hard, because you can probably do it easier with Michael Page above the door, but going out as Bob Smith or whatever recruitment, it's a lot harder, as you'll know from building from scratch. Why is a big one that I wrote down. Like for me, I wanted to be my own boss for a variety of reasons, and it was never around wealth or money. That was like a byproduct of doing it. Don't get me wrong, there was times where I went to my old MD and was like, hey, look, I'm earning loads of money here on commission, but I want to take 50% of everything I bill, no base. But that was like my risk appetite.
Yeah.
And anyone who comes and says that to me, like, that's an instant green flag.
Yeah.
But I think, the money's got to be a byproduct. The success has got to be a byproduct of, the real reason you're doing it. And I think for me, it was, we just had the law stuff. We'd got, baby in the oven, and not literally, that was a laptop in the oven, but baby but in the oven. Obviously, third child came a few years later, but it was like, I want to have time. I want to be one of those dads that goes to sports day and picks the kids up from school. But equally, there's times where I've been taking calls on holiday, closing deals in restaurants, missing out on christenings, weddings. Like there's so many razor blades for the champagne moments.
Yeah.
So I think, really doing some soul searching on the why and why now. Big piece of advice on that is there'll never be a perfect time. And I think 99% of people don't do their own business because they've
waited the right time.
For the stars to align.
Yeah.
And I think, you're a great example of this, and probably, my example's the right time as well. Sorry, it was completely the wrong time with everything that was going on, but I had to make it work. And I think sometimes that like fire under your ass and, bailiffs chasing down your mortgage payments if you don't make a success of it, there's never a better motivation. So, and then the last one I think for me is like on the looking for investment would be the financials. What are you prepared to give away for what level of involvement? And I think from hindsight, getting really nitty gritty down to like the shitty granular level on what is your job and locking that in. Because for me, one of the best potential businesses that I walked away from last year, if we'd got that strategy right and we'd got that really nailed down from the start, we'd have smashed it. And I think, we didn't ultimately. And I think the goalpost move, I think I've also found that like money does interesting things to people, and alcohol and success in equal measures. The more of those things certain people and certain characters consume or achieve, like morals and values and stuff starts slipping. So I think, from that perspective, really do your homework and due diligence, both investor and investee, on who you're getting into bed with. So they'd be my investment tips. I don't know if there's any horror stories to share over and above that, but
mate, just to say, like every single time, every little point that you went through, I was smiling along the way, because I've had to go through that entire process over the last 6 months. And like first time that we met the very first investor, who's, as you said, fate, he was out because of the previous agreement. We changed the agreement, and now he was our first investor. And I remember the first time I met him, because he managed my business partner and their old company. And he said, like, it's the first time we've met, like, why are you doing this? Like, what do you want to get out of this? I think he was expecting me to be like, I want to go for a big event and then, pay my mortgage off, all the rest of it. But I basically just said, like, my business's tagline is coaching recruiters to get 1% better. My podcast is called the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast. I've only ever really worked in recruitment, and I'm fucking sick to death of the stigma of being a recruitment consultant in the UK. I want to change that. I'm doing as much as I can, but it's not scalable. I want something that I can scale that's going to really make a dent in this industry, make it better. And I remember him sat there going, that's a really cool answer, but materially though. And I was just like, well, that will come with. And I was like, if we build something that's fucking unbelievable, like we'll make it work. Like if we can get a team around us, we'll make it work, and then the money will just come. Like for me, I've always had that mindset of if I can get really fucking good at something, the money will follow. And I don't know where that necessarily came from. I must have heard it from a podcast or read it in a book or something. But when you study, like part of NLP is you study excellence, right? You study very successful people and what are their behaviors, what are their beliefs, what are their habits, etc. And a lot of the really successful people, now let's face it, most people don't get into football because they want to get rich. They want to get into football because they love playing football, right? Fighting might be slightly different. Some people like fighting, but let's be honest, they're quite tough and whatever. But anyway, but people, and in recruitment is quite interesting because a lot of people just get into recruitment to earn money and then find out they're quite good at it. But broadly speaking, in business and in life, the people that get really fucking good at something, deliver a phenomenal service or create an amazing product, the money will follow if you're really good. And that's the second investor that came on board. And I said to him, a few people have kind of gone missing or said they were out because there are other people doing a similar thing. And this is the moment, and I was like, I really want to work with this guy. When he was like, let me just stop, and he's a northern bloke as well. He's like, let me just stop you right there, Charles. That's bollocks. I'm not being funny. That's bollocks. He's like, good that you've got competitors because that's going to drive you to be really, really fucking good. He's like, as long as you do your best and make your product as best as you possibly can, then you'll be all right. Like everyone has competitors. It's like, you think that Samsung saw iPhone and were like, nah, we're not going to make a smartphone.
Yeah, exactly.
Mad,
No,
isn't it?
100%. No, I love that. I think it's that whole byproduct of, doing something with purpose, with intent. The mission is greater than the byproduct is success, right? And money and the nice shiny things will come off the back of it. But I mean, we used to have a client, this is hilarious, but going back to like the recruitment side, we had a client in the rec to rec space. Their whole hiring mantra was like PhDs. And here's me thinking, oh, like,
Poor, hungry, and driven.
desperate was his D. Desperate. But
Oh,
like,
okay,
I was
fucking hell.
like, what do you mean by that? I was thinking scientist, but he said like PhD, poor, hungry, and desperate. I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, first thing we'll do is they get the first big commission check, and we'll take them down to BMW. We'll get them or Mercedes. We'll get them a £600 a month car commitment because that'll tie them in. Then they've got to then earn that again. I'm like, fucking hell, this is like Wolf of Wall Street kind of stuff. Like, didn't last long. That wasn't a business I wanted to recruit for, but each their own. But yeah, I think it's the right view.
Yeah.
Your view.
Poor, hungry, and desperate. That's wild, by the way, isn't it?
Savage. So yeah, when it comes to investing, I imagine that anyone listening to this, doesn't need my advice, right? So they can kind of fast forward through this. But if I was to give this might help people looking for investment to understand the mindset of someone that was investing. So I'll say it anyway. But I think, why you wanting to invest is a real important question you got to ask yourself. I think a lot of the time for me, it was like, I'm big on like delayed gratification, long game mentality, all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to, anytime we'd got cash in the business, I wanted that money working for me. So it was like, right, well, how can I find another little mini me of 5 years prior now to build a business? But I think it's got to be more than like a flutter, a gamble, a punt. I'm not saying that any of mine were any of those things, but like you've got to be like all in. You've got to want to do it with that person, and you've got to be prepared to swords and shield in the trenches and stuff. So I think that's a really important one. Understanding the background of the people that you're investing in. Have they done it before? Have they got the ability to go and do it again? Because you look at Mourinho at Chelsea, right? Came in amazing first time round, second time not so great. Like it's hard to replicate something done previously. Have they got the network and the reputation, the space that they're operating on? But how can you evidence and reference that? Anyone can turn up with a billing spreadsheet and go, "Oh, we build 400 grand in this market. These are our clients." Like, what level of due diligence I would go into, probably then means if you're looking for investment, you ain't gonna fudge that. You ain't gonna go like, oh, Mickey Mouse it or anything. Bob Jones at such and such a company.
Yeah.
Um, I think the relationship between the two, like there has to be trust. There has to be a kind of, get the scalpel, cut the hand, shake hands with the
Yeah.
blood. You've got to be all in it together, and you've got to like trust each other that you're both going to come good on your promises. And I think the most important thing for me, like anybody can be a good recruiter. I think if they've got the right mindset and a good manager and a good coach and willing to do the reps, willing to do the hard yards, like you said, call
Yeah.
1,000 Zoom spreadsheets and do the
Yeah.
data. I think the most important thing is like, can they attract talent? Like, there's no point investing in a solopreneur that's going to sit at home and do 250 and run a lifestyle business. The most important thing is when people sit in front of that person, do they want to join them? And how do you then validate and reference that? I don't know how you do that as an investor, but like I get some of the team to sit in with these people and be like, look, pretend you're in an interview. Would you run through brick walls for that person? Would you want to, go in the trenches and battle through COVID again or battle through whatever shit that, the world throws in our direction for that guy or girl? Because ultimately, it's leadership, right?
Yeah, 100%, mate. Well, look, there's been some banging bits of advice throughout the entire episode, and yeah, I'm super grateful, mate, because like that was I really enjoyed that, and there was so many cool parts that we went through, and yeah, we covered pretty much everything we wanted to. But as you know, I finish every episode with the same question. Following this particular episode, how can people get 1% better in recruitment?
Oh, it's a tough one, this. I think anyone can be 1% better at anything if they just apply themselves. Like, I think there's a stat. If you spend 18 minutes on something a day, you're the top 5% in the world. So, take golf, take recruitment, take whatever, weightlifting, take, yoga, etc. 18 minutes a day isn't a massive sacrifice. But if you want to be amazing at anything, there has to be sacrifice. With every reward, there has to be risk. So I think for me, like in a world with AI, pitch slapping, emails, LinkedIn, you've got to be able to cut through the noise that is now like automated noise.
Mhm.
And I think by being human is the first and foremost piece. So, we've got some values in our business which are like world-class basics. So how do you make someone feel is a big barometer on like how likely they are to do business with you. Did you solve the problem? Yes. Did you find them a candidate? All that kind of stuff. Like is a byproduct of did you make them feel warm and fuzzy and special in that process? Did you do every bit that you could to, provide an outcome that was amazing for that person? And these little things for me come back to like mindset, discipline. You've got to do the reps. You've got to pick the phone up. You've got to have conversations. You've got to take people out for lunches and coffees and get under the bonnet. And I think, like for my side, you've got to want to be world class. Because if you don't want to be world class, what's the point of being 1% better? Recruitment, in my eyes, you can get a 30 grand job at Tesco, stacking shelves and beep beep beep. You can get a 30 grand basic, probably 25 grand, I don't know, in entry level recruitment. It's a pretty shit job for no money. You've got to be earning the 5 grand, 10 grand, 15 grand paychecks. So I think, yeah, for me, it kind of comes down to that whole like, it's the basics. Make the first impression count. Listen more than you speak, which you've done amazing, by the way, Charles, on this podcast, unlike some other hosts. Be memorable. Going above and beyond. Like if you're working in a recruitment business, like get close to the founder, get close to the top billers, get close to the leadership team, not in like a fluffy, wanky kind of way, but how do I take the magic in this room or in this, virtual room in the remote world that we sometimes find ourselves in, and how to put my own spin on it? How do I be like ruthlessly, authentically me in every conversation, in every, like your mood's a choice. I don't understand people that get up and they're like, oh, I'm tired, oh, I'm moody, like fuck off. Like you choose your mood. Like choose your
Yeah.
mood,
Yeah.
apply
Yeah.
yourself, put the graft in, do the reps.
Love that.
You're
By the
right.
way, that last thing that you just said about choose your mood. So the guy I mentioned earlier, my old NLP coach, Ricky, who's been on this podcast before, when he came and done like we in my old company, we used to have like a quarterly like roundup where we'd have like a health coach or an NLP guy or an athlete, and then we would go and do an activity, have some food, have some drinks. And he came in and was talking all about mindset and how to reframe like reframe your mood and all the rest of it. And he was like, I invite you all to consider that how you feel now is your choice. And then he went silent and everyone's kind of looking because the first time you hear that, it's like, what the fuck do you mean? Like, I'm just tired. It's like, no, I'm inviting you to think about that is your choice. And then after that, the banter in the office was just like, oh, I had a bit of a shit sleep. I feel a bit tired today. You choose to be tired. And then it just became like a ruthless banter thing. And it's just like, I'm feeling a bit down today. You choose to feel down. You're like, all right, okay. And it actually kind of worked. But then if you do it too much, it gets a little bit toxic sometimes. It's like, no, genuinely, like my nan just died. It's like, you're choosing to feel sad. All right, fucking relax.
Get the CRM. She might have died 3 times before. No kidding. No, look, you've got to lead. You got to lead with empathy and vulnerability. So I think a good leader with emotional intelligence, situational awareness will figure that one out pretty quickly. But I'm a massive fan. Like, you choose your mood and you choose to be offended. And in this world where everyone's like a flannel nowadays, and it's like, oh, sticking labels on whatever and standing up for whatever cause is, in the BBC, like, you're making that choice. And I think if you're going to make a choice, make a better choice. Like, choose to invest in yourself, choose to invest in stocks and shares, put money away, put money into your pension, like, do the holidays, do the nice things, enjoy life, but like, do something today that future Charles is going to thank himself for
I
in
was
10.
just about to say that. Yeah, that's a really, really good question to ask yourself is when you're doing something, will future me thank me for what I'm doing? And like when you're making a sacrifice, like I was speaking to my uncle about this, about like going to the gym and stuff. And like there's so many times like when I'm doing legs, it's like no one likes doing legs at the gym. But I'm like, future me will help, like will thank me for this. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like at the moment it fucking sucks. Like
Yeah.
when you're letting a candidate down and when you're calling a client when you know you've lost the fucking tender or whatever it is, like
Yeah.
future you is going to thank you. So yeah, really, really good message, mate.
So,
Awesome. Well, look, thank you so much again for coming on. I'll put all your details below this episode. And for people that have made it this far, thank you very much. Make sure you like, follow whatever platform it is, and we'll see you next week.
thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for watching this week's episode. If you've enjoyed it, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. I'd love to know what your biggest takeaway was from this week's episode. I am also looking for new people to come on the show. So if you are someone that has an interesting story, you've got loads of passion around a specific topic that can help the recruitment industry, or perhaps it's someone that you might know, please reach out to me. I reach out to a lot of people myself. I get a lot of people reach out to me, but there's so many people in this industry that I might not necessarily be aware of. So please put people in touch with me or get in touch with me if you are interested in appearing on the show. We record most of the episodes at my house here in Welwyn Garden City. I do them remotely sometimes for international guests, and I've got a couple of studios in London that I can use as well. And I can also go to your office as well. I go to people's offices to do them all the time. But look, I really enjoy doing this podcast, and I'm always curious to hear people's feedback on what we can do to make it better, right? So if you have made it this far and you've got some ideas, I'm all ears. That Brian sounded really silly. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate all the love and support, and we'll see you next week.